What's up, everybody? It's AG Reviews back at it again, and today we're going to talk about all the movies I saw in the months of April and May and rank them from worst to best. Now, before we get started with the ranking, I only got to see 8 movies in the months of April and May. Life has been extremely busy for me, so I haven't had a lot of free time recently. So that's kind of why I combined the 2 months rather than just doing the 1 month like I normally would. But I will say, when it comes to the quality of these 8 films, really the movie that's ranked last on this list was one that I was extremely disappointed by. But every other film on this list was anywhere from good to one of the best I've seen in a couple of years. So this list was very hard to make. I mean, there was some very quality movies that came out in the months of April and May. So this was definitely a hard list to make. But with that said, let's get started with the ranking. So coming in last at number 8 is going to be Until Dawn. And for me, this is very conflicting because I absolutely love the video game Until Dawn. I talked about it in my review. I have beaten both versions of that game. I've platinumed both versions of that game and have spent many, many hours playing that game. So when I heard that they were making this, live action adaptation of the game, and then I started to hear more of the details about the game, I was definitely worried. I felt like, any time a video game adaptation does not actually adapt to the story that the title is supposed to be adapting, I always have cause for concern. With this film, it was a little bit different, though, because I felt like, the way that Until Dawn plays out, if you strip away all of the game features of the branch timelines and the choices affecting the outcome of the story, I feel like you're kind of just left with a generic horror film. So when they were changing that up, I thought, okay, this could work. This could be a way to kind of honor the game, but not adapt that story exactly. And honestly, that's one of the main positives, is I felt like the concept this film had of the looping, repeating deaths was very creative, and I felt like was the most interesting part of the film. I also felt like the pacing and the visual style of the film was very comparable to the game. I felt like they did an effort to make it look like the visual style of the video game, which I really appreciated. And then also I felt like there was some good fan service in there. I feel like, spoilers if you haven't seen the movie, there was connections to the game, and it basically confirmed that this movie took place in the universe of the game rather than just being a straight-up adaptation that ignores the video game. So I enjoyed that. But that's really where the positives end. The cast is not great. The acting is not good. The uniqueness of the concept of the film wears very thin very quickly because there's just way too much going on. It's too many genres being blended together. And then for them to change the story so drastically, this version does not offer anything that's even remotely comparable to the game. So when you take the name of the game and you decide to adapt it, you're obviously going to have the comparisons to the story that we got with the game. And this film just lacks, and it doesn't compare whatsoever to that game. And yeah, all the things I said about it, in the negatives is really what holds it back. They could have did something good here, but I just think that the effort all around was not done very well. And they set up some sequel stuff, which I don't know if they were hinting that it was going to be just for films, or if they were kind of going to, play around and maybe do both films and the games, which I thought was cool. But I'm pretty sure this movie didn't make a lot of money, so I don't think that's actually going to go anywhere. So just overall, it feels like kind of a waste of time. I don't really think that it serviced anyone. It doesn't serve the casual horror fan, and then it doesn't serve the hardcore fans of the game. Coming in at last, at number 8, is going to be Until Dawn for me. Coming in at number 7 is going to be Christopher Landon's new film, Drop. I think this is a film, like I said, with this list, I think from here on out, I do enjoy these films. I don't think any of these are particularly bad. But what I will say is that for Drop, I think this is the one of the bunch that the more time I had since seeing it, I have kind of liked it a little bit less. And I don't think it's anything particularly that the film does that makes me like it less. I think compared to everything else on this list, though, it just doesn't stand out as much. That does have a unique spin, obviously, with the technology and with the plot progressing with the drops. I felt like that was very unique. I felt like Megan Fahey and Brandon Skolner, as the two leads in the film, were really good. I felt like this movie provided some good thrills and some edge of your seat stuff. The problem for me, though, is like in the third act, it gets way too crazy. Really goes overboard. I really liked when it was more intimate and, was in the restaurant. And, was just kind of between the two characters and kind of the mystery of trying to figure out who exactly this was that was doing the drops and why they picked her. I thought that was the best part, and then the third act kind of unravels a bit. Visually, though, I feel like Christopher Landon did a good job here. Direction-wise, I felt like that was good. But everything else outside of that is just kind of paint by numbers when it comes to thrillers. So this one didn't blow me away, and it's one that, I really liked it after seeing it, but then when you kind of sit on it, it's like, I don't really have a desire to rewatch it, or is it's not one out of all these films, that's really on my mind all that much. Even, honestly, compared to, Until Dawn, to me, Until Dawn was more memorable just because of being a fan of that game than Drop was, even though I think Drop was a way better movie. So coming in at number 7 is going to be Drop. Coming in at number 6 is going to be Bring Her Back, the sophomore effort from the Rocka Brothers. I was a huge fan of Talk to Me. I loved that film. In 2023, when that came out, that was one of my favorite films of that year. So when I heard about this film, I was very excited for it. I loved what we got in the trailers. And honestly, this is a very solid film. This is a film that tackles themes of grief, depression, manipulation, and what the human psyche is willing to do when presented with these very stressful situations. Does it masterfully. Sally Hawkins' performance in this film is magnificent. She basically has a wide range of acting chops that she has to do in this film. When she's supposed to be the nurturing foster mother to these children, and then when she flips and becomes that dark person who's willing to do anything for her lost loved ones. Her performance in this film is just fantastic. Also, the practical effects, the cinematography, the atmosphere that they create in this film was great. I was engaged in the entire runtime of this film because of the atmosphere they create, because of the tension they create. And then when it comes to those moments where we do get the gore and the violence, which I will add, I felt like was a little overhyped by some of the people who got to see this film early. There's not a lot of violence in the film, but when they get to those scenes, my God, it is some of the, image-striking things you'll ever see. There are 2 sequences in this film that, when the violence starts, that were fried into my head. And to this day, visually, there's 2 scenes that will stick with me for a long time. I won't forget these scenes for quite some time, and it's because of the practical effects that they use in these scenes that make them stand out and that make you feel them. It's one of those scenes where you put yourself in that situation and you can feel the goosebumps of what it would be, and it's just done masterfully on the practical effects side. And I love that the Rocka Brothers brought that to this film, because that was one of the things I loved about Talk to Me, the scene, the opening scene, and then the scene where the kid bashes his head on the table, and then in the hospital. It's when they go practical, they know how to really make you feel it, and I love that about this film. But the things that hold this film back for me, and ultimately why it's so low on the list, and why I think, in my opinion, it is a step down from Talk to Me, there's really 3 things. One, the pacing. I like a slow burn as much as anyone, but it does take a while for this film really to get going. The second thing is that the moral ambiguity of everything that's going on in the film is, I like sometimes when a film is ambiguous and doesn't really just spell everything out for you, but I really feel like there were certain things in this film that were just left unanswered that I really feel like the film could have benefited from exploring more. So I wasn't really a huge fan of that. And then where this film goes in like the last 15 to 20 minutes, I felt like kind of unraveled the story and the natural story progression that we were following in the rest of the film, basically, up until the last 15, 20 minutes. And if you've seen the film, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. Like, there's a specific moment where we essentially just change course of where we're going with the story, and that didn't really work for me. I don't think the movie, like, fell apart, like, at the end, and it was terrible. But I do feel like that did not feel like where we were naturally going with the story. But overall, I think for a sophomore effort, this is a great film for the Raka brothers. And, obviously, like, I'm a YouTube content creator, so it's very inspiring to see them make two horror films like this and be as effective and be as well done as they are. So coming in at number 6 is going to be Bring Her Back. Coming in at number 5, and this is a little disappointing for me that it's this low on this list, is going to be Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Overall, I very much enjoyed this film. I know, where it's placed here doesn't maybe give that impression, but I really did enjoy this film. I just feel like it was sandwiched in between two months worth of really good movies. And in this film, when it's doing things that Mission Impossible normally does, it does them right. Tom Cruise, wonderful in the film. The final reckoning angle of it being the last Mission Impossible film, I feel like they did a really good job with, and they had the correct stakes for what would be a final Mission Impossible film. And then obviously, too, the stunts of this film are some of the best. I mean, that underwater sequence and the plane sequence, if I did a ranking of like all the stunts that have ever been done in the Mission Impossible films, I mean, those would be very high up. So you get a lot in this film of, the things that you go to a Mission Impossible film for. And it does feel like a satisfying conclusion. So for me, that's why overall the film works. A lot of my problems with the film, though, are in the first act. This is by far the most convoluted and messy Mission Impossible film. What they do with Luther really disappointed me. Like, really disappointed me for a final film in this franchise, because he was a character I loved. So that was disappointing. And then, there's too many flashbacks. Like, we actually cut and, like, flash to scenes from other films that we've already seen. So I didn't like that. I'm going to assume that a lot of the problems with this film is because of the fact that it was delayed to all hell, and I know the budget like ballooned because of it, because of the writer's strike. The last two Mission Impossible films, in my opinion, have kind of been unlucky to release when they have, because we had Dead Reckoning that was really affected by COVID, and then this that was affected by the strikes. So I don't know if I necessarily blame the creatives involved. I think it was just an unfortunate scenario. But I do think we still got, with that circumstances, we still got really great things in this film, and a really touching and final send-off for Ethan Hunt, and I think it worked. It did overall. It worked, even though there were some disappointments. I still very much enjoyed this film. So number 5 is going to be Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Coming in at number 4, and one that I didn't actually do a full review for, is going to be Warfare. This is a film. For me personally, war movies are not my type of thing, right? That's not something I am overly in love with. They're not one of my favorite genres. And there's only a select few, really, that I love. And honestly, I'm going to add Warfare to that list, because this film was so effective, and it was a film that sat with me after I saw it. Pretty much everything about this film that I loved was encompassed in that opening scene. You get an opening scene, and I know it was trending for a little while, and I'm assuming anyone who is in the movie space and knows about that opening scene, where it's all the guys standing around, and they're party, like they're having like a little party where they're listening to Call on Me, and it's like very happy-go-lucky vibes, and it's a great opening. And the opening to me actually aged better when I saw the whole film, because that is the only moment of happiness that you get in this film. Because the remaining hour and 25 minutes is just some of the most heartbreaking, terrifying in the real world sense of film that I've seen in some time. And there's really no plot to this film. It's really just a day of a life in these soldiers and what they went through during this war. It was based on a true story. I know the real people that are in this film were involved in the making of it. And it just shows you the horrors of war and how we look at war and like who's right and wrong. It doesn't even give you like a definitive answer on that, and it just shows you the horror of war. And it does that for an hour and 25 minutes, and it was just so effective. Because and then, like I said, that opening scene is even more effective in hindsight, because you think back and that's the only moment of happiness that any of these characters have throughout this entire film. And it's like the soldiers, it kind of gives you a different perspective of war and shows you that, yes, like these are just people, and they're people who want to live a good life, and they're making these sacrifices so that way we can do what we do and live the lives that we live. Yeah, so I mean, I didn't do a full review on this, so I'm probably missing some stuff. But this movie just sat with me. It was one that like I thought about for days and days after, because it impacted me. That's just the best way I can talk about it. I really enjoyed this film. I don't know how many times I'll rewatch it though, because it is rough to get through. I mean, it's very rough, and I think that was the point. That was what Alex Garland and crew wanted to do, is they wanted to show you the dirty side of war and of the Army, and they did a good job. They did a really good job, and they did it in a way where like there's really no story here, but it was done effectively. So yeah, coming in at number 4 is going to be Warfare. And then getting into my top 3, number 3 and number 2 were really hard for me to rank. I loved both of these films. So I don't even really know why. If you asked me on a different day, maybe I would rank the other one over the one I'm going to get into in 2. But yeah, these were hard. But coming in at number 3 is going to be Final Destination Bloodlines. For me, I thought this was a return to form, the Final Destination. It's one of my favorite franchises, being a millennial. You know, that was embroiled into our pop culture. And I just felt like this was such a good return to form. It did just enough to change up the formula by, having the premonition back in the 60s and it going through the bloodlines of all the people that were there. I felt like it really just switched up the formula enough to keep it feeling fresh while also still sticking to what we know and kind of having the story play out like we normally would. I felt like the kills were really inventive in this film, particularly the MRI scene. I feel like is an all-timer for the Final Destination franchise. Like if I was doing a ranking, that's going to be up there. It's going to probably be top 3 for me. And then the group of characters here that we got, I felt like was one of the better crew of characters that we've gotten in this franchise. They were very likable. And you wanted to root for them. You wanted them to get through this. The Tony Todd message, like scene he had in the film, was just heartwarming and was just done very well and was a fitting end, to his acting career. And I'm glad that this was his last outing and his last scene that he got, basically just saying farewell to everybody. So yeah, I mean, overall, this was such a return to form. I absolutely love this film. I'm definitely going to rewatch it when it comes out, on Blu-ray. Negatives wise, I mean, there's not too many. I will say, like, yes, the uniqueness of it and the original concept of the original premonition, very unique, but then it does become kind of a paint by numbers Final Destination movie. So if you were looking, for it to be changed significantly, I don't know how much of that was really going to happen. Even though I think there was a pretty solid group of characters, I think some of them were underdeveloped. And then I do think the main protagonist was kind of outshined by the brother. I can't remember his name right now, but the one with all the tattoos and the piercings. He was definitely the best character in the film and one of the best characters in the franchise. So I didn't think that really did it any favors by having the main character be outshined by one of the side characters. But yeah, man, I really enjoyed this film. I had a great time with it. It was a lot of fun. And I can't wait to rewatch it. Like, this is one of the films that I have on the list that I'm probably going to pick up on Blu-ray and rewatch. So yeah, Final Destination Bloodlines comes in at number 3. But coming in at number 2 is going to be Marvel's Thunderbolts. We're back, baby. Marvel's back. This film was awesome. I had a lot of fun with it. It's probably my favorite film in like Phase 4 or 5 area. At least when it comes to like original characters, I still think the two best films in Phase 5 and 4 are No Way Home and Deadpool and Wolverine. But when you're talking about like homegrown MCU characters, I actually think this is the best film since Endgame. I really do. I think they did a very good job. Florence Pugh is a movie star. She's wonderful. I'm at the point too, like myself, I know it might be controversial, but I'm at the point where I prefer her character to Scarlett Johansson's Black Widow. I like her more. I think she's more charismatic. I think they've done more with her when it comes to like a character arc. I think the whole team dynamic here is just great. I think everybody plays a good part. A couple of them are a little bit underdeveloped and didn't really have too much of a character arc, but, that's okay. I think the main players, Sentry, Yelena, John Walker as U.S. Agent, I think he was good. I think they all stand out and they really carry this movie. What this movie does really well for me is it just puts an emphasis and a focus back on characters, which we haven't really seen in Marvel. I mean, a lot of these films that they've been releasing in Phase 4 and 5 have really felt jumbled and messy and like they were made by committee. This film feels like it had a vision from the beginning. They stuck with it and they didn't mess with it at all. And it was surrounded around the emotional character arcs that these characters go on. So for me, that's why this film works. I bought into this team. I bought into these characters. And then they executed a story that they wanted to do, and they didn't mess with it in post-production. They didn't do all that. Like, there's certain things they did tweak at the end. I wasn't a huge fan of the ending, but I do understand, like, Doomsday is the next movie that we're getting, so, like, we kind of had to make up some ground, right, and do something that maybe I wouldn't have preferred or maybe wasn't exactly the right decision. But yeah. I'm probably missing stuff, but I really enjoyed this film. I really had fun. It gave me confidence going forward that, all these changes that Kevin Feige's making, where they're focusing more on quality over quantity, it made me believe that they're making the right calls, and going into these Avengers films, I feel like we're in good hands. Even with all the controversy of the casting and everything that we've gotten for that film, I think we're on a path of good, and we're righting the ship, and we got Fantastic Four next month, which I think is going to be fantastic, no pun intended. So yeah, I really enjoyed Thunderbolts, so it comes in as my number 2. But coming in at number 1 for the months of April and May, and there wasn't a close second, is going to be Sinners. This film is what you think of when you think of the movie theater experience. Everything about this film worked for me. I was trying not to give it like a perfect score when I saw it. I was trying to not have recency bias. But now that we've had some time since it's been out, the more I think about it, the more I love it. Ryan Coogler is just so masterful as a director and a writer. And he does such a good job with the genre fusion of this film, bringing together horror with historical drama, with the themes surrounded of like religion and music, and everything this film does to me was just done so masterfully and was on a level that I don't think have seen in a few years. I mean, when you got Tom Cruise praising your movie and he's basically like viewed as like the savior of cinema for what he did with Top Gun, it's warranted. I mean, everything about this film just works. And it's just done so well. And it is, to me, the closest thing to a flawless film. There's not a lot about this film that I can say I didn't like, because pretty much everything in this film works on almost every level. And then when it comes to the acting, I mean, you had great performances in this film. Obviously, Michael B. Jordan playing dual roles. He's fantastic, and I always feel like Ryan Coogler brings out the best in him. You had the debut of Miles Canton, as Sonny. I felt like he was great in the role. Haley Steinfeld as Mary, she was fantastic. Cornbread, like everybody, Annie, everybody in this film is great. There is no weak performance in this film. Everybody shows up. Everybody gives it their all. And when you have that mixed with a script that is so elegant, so clever, just done so well, you get a film like Sinners. And I would be very shocked if this film is not my favorite film of the year. Like, we will have to get a fantastic, fantastic movie for it to beat out Sinners. It's like, I'm pretty much like locking it in that Sinners is going to be my favorite film of this year, unless we get something that just blows it out of the water with expectation. Because, like, looking at the calendar, I'm like, I don't know. I don't really know what's going to beat that. Like, for what I like in my personal taste, like, the movie was damn near flawless. And the soundtrack, I didn't even talk about the soundtrack. Oh my God. What an amazing soundtrack. Like, everything about it was just... Remick, I didn't even talk about them. And then all the vampires. Like, it wasn't as big of a part as the marketing may have made you believe, but when they show up, it's just done so effective. And it's just so well. Everything about this film is great. So I'm not going to keep ranting about Sinners. You can go watch my review. But Sinners easily comes in at number 1 and is my favorite film so far of the year. And I think it's going to be hard to beat. But yeah, guys, that's my list of my favorite films ranked from worst to best for the months of April and May. Like I said, I've been a little busy lately, so it's been hard for me to get out and see some movies and review them, and even like live streams. I'm kind of taking a break a little bit from the live streams for a bit. But I'm gonna try to do what I can. I'm not gonna guarantee that I'll be cranking out videos every day or even every week, because life happens. I still will always do this because I love movies. I love talking about movies. But yeah. So yeah, go ahead, comment below, and let me know what your ranking from these months were, what your favorite movies were. I'm assuming there's movies I missed here that people think are great. Comment below and recommend those movies for me, and then I could probably watch them and see what I think. But yeah, besides that, everyone have a great night.